Elena Rivera liked quiet places, the kind that felt safe, predictable, and far away from trouble. Bellissimo, the Italian restaurant where she worked, was one of those places. At least, it used to be. Every evening the restaurant smelled like basil and fresh bread. The jazz playing softly in the background blended with the hum of conversations. Golden lights from chandeliers reflected in the wine glasses, and everything seemed calm, almost peaceful. Elena moved between tables with the smooth rhythm of someone who had done this 1,000 times. She balanced plates with steady hands, her dark hair tied neatly in a ponytail, her black uniform spotless. On the surface, she looked composed. Inside, she carried a constant ache of tension, like a string pulled too tight. She had worked here for nearly 3 years, ever since she left her hometown and, more importantly, since she left Aaron. She didn't like to think about him. The way he used to call her dozens of times a day. The way his voice had a sweetness that could turn sharp in seconds. The way he made her believe she was safe until he wasn't. "Table 9 needs water," said her coworker, Mia, as she brushed past. "Got it," Elena replied, forcing a small smile. She picked up a pitcher and walked toward the table, her shoes clicking softly against the floor. But halfway there, her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. She froze. She didn't need to check who it was. Her heart started to race. She had blocked his number before. More than once. But somehow, he always found a way. Aaron. Taking a slow breath, she ignored it and poured water for the couple at table 9. The man thanked her, the woman didn't look up, and Elena slipped away as quietly as she'd come. Behind the counter, Mia leaned close. "That him again?" Elena hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. You should really go to the police," Mia said. "That's not normal." Elena gave a tired laugh. "He hasn't done anything illegal. Just calls. Messages. Watching sometimes." Mia frowned. "That's already too much. He's obsessed." "I know," Elena whispered, looking down. "But going to the police might make him angrier." She busied herself arranging napkins that didn't need arranging. It was easier than admitting how scared she really was. The night passed in its usual rhythm, the clinking of glasses, quiet laughter, the smell of garlic and wine. But every time the door opened, Elena's stomach twisted. Every new face that entered could be him. She had learned to smile through the fear. When her shift ended, she changed out of her uniform, grabbed her coat, and stepped into the cold Chicago night. The air was sharp, filled with the sound of cars and distant sirens. She started her walk home 6 blocks through streets she knew by heart. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. She didn't open it. She just kept walking, head down, wishing she could disappear. Halfway home, she felt it, that prickling at the back of her neck. The feeling of being watched. She turned around. The street was empty. Just flickering streetlights and drifting snow. But the fear lingered all the way to her apartment door. Inside, she locked the door twice, sat on her small couch, and tried to breathe. Just another day, she told herself. Just another shift. Just another message. But deep down, she knew something was coming, something that would change everything. The next evening, Bellissimo was busier than usual. A local music festival had filled the city with tourists, and every table was occupied. The restaurant buzzed with conversation, laughter, and the soft rhythm of live piano. Elena slipped into her routine easily. Greet the table. Smile. Serve. Leave. Invisible and efficient. That's how she liked it. Until she noticed him. He sat at the bar, alone, in the same seat every time she'd seen him, the third stool from the left. She had noticed him before, but never really seen him. Tonight, she couldn't ignore him. The man looked out of place in a way that drew the eye. His suit was dark and perfectly tailored. His hair, black with just a hint of wave, brushed his collar. His face was sharp, handsome in a quiet, dangerous way. He didn't look like the kind of man who had to raise his voice to be heard. People would simply listen. Elena had learned his name by accident once, overhearing the manager greet him. Luciano Moretti. Some customers whispered he was a businessman. Others said he was something else, something powerful. Elena never asked. As she passed the bar, she felt his gaze on her, not in the usual way men looked, with hunger or arrogance. This was different. Focused. Curious. Watching without intruding. It made her heart beat faster anyway. Need refills for table 6, Mia whispered. On it, Elena replied, trying to shake the strange awareness she felt. While refilling the glasses, her phone buzzed again. She slipped it from her apron just enough to see the message. Aaron, you can ignore me all you want, but we're not done. I'll see you soon, Lena. The name. The threat. The familiar cold panic. She nearly dropped the pitcher. Elena, the customer asked. You okay? She blinked. Yes, sorry, just a bit tired. When she returned to the counter, her manager, Robert, was there. A kind man with a strict expression. You look pale, he said. Everything all right? Fine, she lied. Just long shift. If anyone's bothering you, you tell me. I will, she promised, though she knew she wouldn't. By the time her break came, she escaped to the staff room and sat on a small bench, pressing her shaking hands together. The message repeated in her head. We're not done. The door opened behind her. Break time? Mia asked, holding a coffee. Yeah, Elena murmured. You're scaring me, girl. You look like you saw a ghost. Maybe I did, she whispered. He found me again. Mia frowned. The ex. How? You changed your number. He always finds a way. He says he just wants to talk. That's what they all say before it gets worse. Elena didn't answer. She just stared at her trembling hands. When she went back out to the floor, she forced herself into her routine again. Move. Smile. Serve. Repeat. Then, near closing time, the door opened. And she froze. Aaron. He walked in wearing a suit and a fake smile, as if this were a date instead of an ambush. Evening, he said lightly. Table for 1. Her voice barely came out. Aaron, you can't be here. I can't eat dinner. His tone was playful, but his eyes were cold. I missed you. She took a step back. Please leave. He smiled wider. I just want to talk. You never answer your phone. Aaron. I drove all this way to see you. Don't be rude. Mia appeared behind her. Sir, if you don't leave, we'll have to call the manager. Aaron's smile vanished. Stay out of this. That's when the voice came, calm, deep, and carrying across the room like a command. She asked you to leave. Everyone turned. Luciano Moretti stood at the bar, one hand resting on his glass, his dark eyes fixed on Aaron. Aaron gave a short, sharp laugh. This doesn't concern you. Luciano didn't move. You're disturbing my dinner. That concerns me. The air in the room shifted. Even Robert, the manager, stopped moving. The pianist paused mid-note. Aaron's face tightened. You think you can tell me what to do? Luciano didn't blink. I don't think. I know. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush air itself. Aaron looked at Elena. This isn't over. Yes, it is, she said quietly, surprising herself. Her voice trembled, but it carried truth. He glared at Luciano one more time, then turned and stormed out. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the piano started again, and the restaurant breathed. Elena realized her hands were shaking so badly she could barely stand. Luciano raised his glass slightly in her direction, not a toast, just a small gesture of acknowledgement, then went back to his quiet drink. Later, when she went to close her tab at the counter, she found something under the receipt. A small black business card with embossed silver numbers. No name. Just one line of text. If he comes back, call me. Her heart thudded. She looked toward the bar, but Luciano was already gone. That night, as she walked home through the cold streets, she turned the card over and over in her hand. She didn't know what kind of man he really was. She didn't know what he wanted. But for the first time in months, she didn't feel completely helpless. Maybe, she thought, as the city lights shimmered against the dark, maybe someone was finally watching back. The next few days at Bellissimo passed quietly, but the silence felt wrong, like the calm before a storm. Elena tried to convince herself that Aaron wouldn't come back. Maybe he was embarrassed. Maybe the confrontation with that man, Luciano Moretti, had scared him enough to stay away. But fear doesn't disappear that easily. It hides, waiting. She hadn't told anyone about the card. It sat in the back of her wallet, smooth and heavy, like a secret she wasn't ready to explain. Sometimes, when her phone buzzed, her hand would brush against it, and she'd remember the low calm of his voice. "You're disturbing my dinner." It wasn't just the words. It was the certainty. The kind of power that didn't need to shout. "Elena, table 7's asking for the special." She blinked. "Right, coming." She moved through her shift, keeping her head down. But every time the door opened, she felt that pulse of panic, just in case. Around 8 o'clock, the air changed. It wasn't something she could see or hear. It was something she could feel. That prickle along her skin again, like static before lightning. She turned toward the entrance. Aaron. Her stomach dropped. He stood just inside, wearing that same dark suit, his hair slicked back, his smile wrong. A wolf wearing human skin. He walked straight toward her section. "Liv," he said, using the nickname she hadn't heard in months. "You look beautiful." Her throat went dry. "You need to leave." "I'm a paying customer," he said, settling into a chair. "You can't kick me out for wanting dinner. This isn't a place for." "For what?" he interrupted, voice rising just enough for nearby tables to notice. "For a man to talk to his girlfriend." Every eye turned. The chatter dimmed. "Ex-girlfriend," Elena said. Aaron leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You decided that, remember? You decided for both of us." Robert, the manager, approached with practiced calm. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Aaron didn't look at him. "Don't worry, Robert. We're just talking." Robert's tone hardened. "You're disturbing my staff." "I haven't even ordered," Aaron said, still staring at Elena. "Come on, Liv. 5 minutes. That's all I want." "I'm not talking to you," she said softly, backing away. He grabbed her wrist. Not hard, but firm. Possessive. The kind of grip that told her he didn't believe she could say no. The water pitcher in her other hand trembled. Her breath came in shallow bursts. "Aaron, let go. Don't walk away from me," he hissed. "We were supposed to fix things." "Sir." The voice came again, smooth as silk and sharp as a blade. Luciano Moretti stood 3 tables away. He hadn't been there a moment ago, but somehow he was now tall, calm, still. His eyes were dark and steady, the kind of gaze that made everything else in the room fade. Aaron blinked at him. "This doesn't concern you." Luciano's tone didn't change. "You're disrupting my dinner." "That concerns me." Aaron scoffed. "You think you can just." Luciano didn't move closer, but the air thickened anyway. His presence filled the space. He didn't threaten. He didn't raise his voice. He simply was, and that was enough. "The lady asked you to leave," Luciano said. Aaron's jaw tightened. "This is ridiculous." He looked at Elena, then at Robert. "You all think you can control my life. Fine. But this isn't over." He threw his napkin on the table and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. For a moment, the restaurant was silent. Then conversations resumed in whispers. Elena stood frozen, still clutching the water pitcher, her wrist throbbing where he'd grabbed her. She couldn't seem to breathe. Luciano turned back toward the bar, sat down, and lifted his glass. As though nothing had happened. As though the chaos he'd stopped was just another routine part of his night. Mia appeared at Elena's side. "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're shaking." "I just need a second." Robert came over next, his expression caught between worry and professionalism. "Elena, I'm filing a report. If he comes back, we're calling the police." She nodded numbly. "He won't come back." But she didn't believe it. When her shift ended, she changed slowly, her wrist now marked by faint red lines. As she stepped outside, rain began to fall, thin, cold, and endless. She pulled her jacket tight and started walking home. Her thoughts tangled between fear and confusion. Halfway down the block, a sleek black car idled near the curb. The window rolled down. Luciano's voice came from the driver's seat. "It's late," he said simply. "I'll drive you." Elena hesitated. "You don't have to." "I wasn't asking," he said, not unkindly. "Get in." Something in his tone made refusal impossible. She got in. The interior smelled faintly of leather and rain. He didn't speak for the first few minutes, letting the hum of the city fill the silence. Finally, he asked, "How long has he been bothering you?" 3 months, she said quietly. "Since I left him." Luciano's fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Why did you stay that long?" "Because I thought it was love," she admitted. He was charming at first. Attentive. Then he started checking my phone, my messages. It felt like protection until it wasn't. Luciano's jaw flexed. Men like that don't change. They just shift the shape of their control. She looked at him. "You talk like you've seen it before." "I have," he said simply. "Too many times." When they reached her building, a narrow brick walk-up, he parked but didn't unlock the doors. He looked at her for a moment, and she felt pinned by the intensity in his eyes. "He'll try again," Luciano said. "You know that." "Yes. If he does, you call me. Do you understand?" "I can't ask you." "You're not asking. You're being told." He reached into his jacket and handed her another card. This one had a single number written in bold ink. "Direct line," he said. "You call this, not the police." She swallowed hard. "Why are you helping me?" His gaze softened, just slightly. "Because I don't like seeing people hurt in my city." He unlocked the door, and she stepped out into the rain. When she turned back, he was already gone. Elena didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside made her flinch. Every shadow made her think Aaron had returned. By morning, exhaustion had replaced fear. She went to work early just to escape her own thoughts. Bellissimo felt like the only place she could hide, the only world that made sense. When she arrived, Mia was setting up tables. "Hey," Mia said softly. "You okay?" "I'm fine." "You're not. You look like a ghost." "I didn't sleep." Mia sighed. "Robert told me what happened. You should report it." "I did. The police took notes, took pictures of my wrist." "Good," Mia said. "And that man, the one at the bar, he really stepped in?" Elena hesitated. "Yes." Mia leaned in. "You know who he is, right?" "I've heard things." "Luciano Moretti runs half the South Side," Mia whispered. "He's not a man you want to owe favors to." "I didn't ask for a favor," Elena said. "He just helped." "Men like him don't do things without reason," Mia warned. "Be careful." Elena tried to laugh it off, but the warning stuck in her chest. That evening, as she took orders, she saw him again. Luciano. Same bar stool. Same quiet presence. Same eyes watching her every move. He didn't speak until her section slowed down near closing time. Then, as she passed the bar, he said her name softly, but it stopped her in her tracks. "Elena." She turned. "Mr. Moretti. You can call me Luke," he said. "Everyone does." "All right. Luke. Can I get you anything?" "The check." She nodded and went to print it. But when she returned, he spoke again, his tone almost casual. "You study design, don't you?" Her hand froze. "What?" "You take online classes through Northwestern," he said, eyes steady. "Graphic design. I heard you mention it once to your coworker." She blinked, surprised. "You remember that?" "I remember details," he said. "It's a habit." Elena placed the bill on the counter, trying to keep her voice even. "That's impressive." "It's useful," he replied. Then, after a pause, "You're talented. I've seen some of your work." Her eyes widened. "How?" "Your coworker posted your poster design on social media. It showed up on my feed. You have an eye for composition." She felt her cheeks warm. "Thank you. I just do it for myself." "You shouldn't," he said. "You should do it for clients. For a living." She gave a small, nervous laugh. "Easy to say when you already have a living." Luciano smiled faintly. "Maybe I can help with that." She frowned. "Help how?" I know people who need designers. Businesses, restaurants, small companies. I could introduce you. I don't want charity. It's not charity, he said. It's connection. There's a difference. Before she could respond, Robert called from the kitchen, breaking the moment. Elena, can you take the dessert tray to table 3? She nodded quickly and turned away, heart pounding. When she looked back, Luke was already watching her again, not like a man admiring a woman, but like a chess player studying a move. After closing, Elena stepped outside into the cool night air. The street was slick from rain again, reflections of the city lights dancing on the pavement. She pulled out her phone, checking for messages, none from Aaron, for once. Just quiet. But when she looked up, she noticed a black car parked across the street. Same make as Luke's. Same tinted windows. For a moment, she thought she was imagining it. Then the window rolled down just slightly. A man inside, not Luke, but someone she recognized from the restaurant, one of his companions, gave a small nod. She froze. He wasn't following her. He was guarding her. The realization was a mix of comfort and unease. At home, she dropped her bag on the couch and sank into silence. She should have felt violated, watched, surrounded by people she didn't know. Instead, she felt safe. For the first time in months, she wasn't alone with her fear. The next day at work, Mia noticed the dark circles under her eyes. You need rest, she said. I'll be fine. Did he show up again? No, Elena said. But someone else did. Mia gave her a sharp look. Who? Elena hesitated. Luke. Mia groaned. You're getting involved, aren't you? I'm not involved, Elena said quickly. He's just around. Men like that don't just hang around, Elena. If he's interested, there's a reason. Maybe he just wants to help. Or maybe he wants something in return, Mia said quietly. Be careful what kind of protection you accept. Elena didn't reply. Because part of her knew Mia was right. But when night came and the city lights shimmered on wet streets, she saw the black car again, waiting near her building. Silent, patient. And she couldn't bring herself to tell it to leave. That night, as she climbed into bed, she thought about the difference between being watched and being protected. Aaron had watched her to own her. Luke was watching to keep her safe. At least, she hoped that was true. She turned off the light, the sound of rain against the window fading into the distance. For the first time in a long time, she slept without fear. By the time Thursday arrived, Chicago felt heavier, clouds pressing down like a lid on the city. The air carried the taste of coming rain. Bellissimo glowed warm against the gray afternoon, golden light spilling from its windows onto the wet sidewalk. Elena walked to work with her coat pulled tight, her thoughts restless. It had been almost a week since the last confrontation. A week since she'd seen Aaron, and a week since Luke had appeared in her life again, quietly, unshakably present. He hadn't called her. He didn't need to. He simply appeared. A black car parked across from her building in the evenings. A tall man reading a newspaper in the cafe across the street. A presence that wasn't intrusive, but unmistakable. She knew what it meant. Luke was keeping watch. Inside the restaurant, the shift started like any other. The scent of tomato and rosemary filled the air. Jazz drifted from the corner speakers, soft enough to blend into the hum of voices. Elena moved between tables, grateful for the distraction of work. You've been quiet lately, Mia said, catching her by the espresso machine. More than usual. Elena smiled faintly. Maybe that's a good thing. Mia studied her. No texts from him? No. Nothing. That's weird, right? It's nice, Elena admitted. But it doesn't feel real. Like he's waiting for something. Mia frowned. You think he's planning something? I don't know. She hesitated, then added, I just know I can't keep living like this. Jumping every time my phone buzzes. Before Mia could respond, Robert's voice came from the front. Elena, your regular's here. Her heart gave a small jolt. She didn't have to ask who. Luke was at the bar, as always. Same stool. Same calm posture. His dark eyes lifted briefly when she approached. Evening, she said, trying not to sound nervous. Elena. His voice was a steady hum, low, deliberate. Busy night? Not yet, she said. Give it another hour. He nodded. Good. I like quiet. She printed his usual order, osso buco and red wine, and slid the receipt toward him. His fingers brushed hers for half a second, and she felt the jolt all the way to her chest. I saw one of your designs last night, he said suddenly. Her head snapped up. What? The bakery on 8th Street. Their new logo, that was yours, wasn't it? Her lips parted. How did you know that? I know people, he said simply. It's good work. A flush crept into her cheeks. Thank you. You should let me introduce you to more clients. Luke. Don't say no yet, he said, a trace of amusement in his tone. You don't owe me anything. I just see potential. You shouldn't waste it. Before she could answer, the bell above the door chimed. The cold air rolled in first. Then came the voice she had prayed never to hear again. Liv. The sound froze her in place. Aaron stood in the doorway, rain dripping from his coat, eyes bright and wild. His smile was stretched too wide. You didn't answer your phone, he said, stepping inside. Robert started forward immediately. Sir, you can't be here. Relax, Aaron snapped. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just want to talk. Elena's heart pounded. Aaron, you're not supposed to be here. I'm not supposed to be anywhere that you don't want me, he said softly. But how am I supposed to know what you want if you keep running away? Luke set his wineglass down, slow and deliberate. He didn't stand, not yet, but every inch of his posture shifted. His men, 2 of them tonight, straightened at the bar's far end. Aaron took another step. You never gave me a chance to explain. There's nothing to explain, Elena said. You need to go. Why? So you can flirt with this guy? He gestured sharply toward the bar. You think I don't know who he is? You think he cares about you? Stop, she said, voice breaking. You're making a scene. Aaron's voice rose. I loved you, Liv. I did everything for you. And you just. Enough. Luke's voice cut through the chaos. Quiet, even, but final. Aaron turned, eyes narrowing. Stay out of this. You're disrupting my dinner again, Luke said, standing now. I told you once. Don't make me repeat myself. For a long moment, no one breathed. Aaron's jaw worked, rage fighting fear. But Luke didn't move. He didn't have to. 2 of his men had subtly positioned themselves at the edges of the room, silent and still. Finally, Aaron spat out, You don't scare me. Luke's gaze didn't waver. You should leave. Now. Aaron hesitated, glancing between them. Then, with a bitter laugh, he said, You think she's safe with you? You'll ruin her. And he walked out. The door slammed behind him. Silence. Then whispers. Elena's knees felt weak. She gripped the counter, struggling to steady her breath. Luke approached slowly, his tone softer now. You okay? I don't know. He nodded toward Robert. She's done for the night. Pay her full shift. Luke. He cut her off gently. Go home, Elena. She wanted to argue, but the exhaustion hit all at once. She grabbed her coat, avoided everyone's eyes, and stepped out into the cold. A black SUV waited at the curb. One of Luke's men stood by the door, umbrella in hand. Mr. Moretti asked us to take you home, he said simply. Elena hesitated, then nodded. The ride was silent except for the steady rhythm of rain. When they stopped at her building, she looked out the window. Luke was standing across the street under an awning, cigarette glowing faintly in the dark. Their eyes met. He gave a small nod. Then she went inside. The following night, the storm broke. Rain hammered the windows, the kind that turned streets into rivers. The restaurant closed early, but Elena stayed behind to help clean up. She felt better keeping busy, anything to keep her mind from circling back to Aaron's face, that look of fury and desperation. By 10:30, she finally stepped out. The rain hit her instantly, cold and heavy. She pulled her hood up and started walking fast toward her apartment. Halfway home, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart sank. She didn't want to look, but she did. Aaron, You can't hide from me, Liv. We need to talk. She froze on the sidewalk, heart hammering. Then she saw him. Across the street, half lit by a flickering lamppost, Aaron, soaked, standing still. Watching. She turned and ran. Her fingers fumbled for the phone, slippery with rain. She scrolled to the number Luke had given her and pressed call. It rang once. Twice. Then his voice. Elena. He's here, she gasped. Outside my building. He's not supposed to be here. Don't go inside, Luke said instantly. Stay where there are people. Where are you? Corner of 9th and Maple. Go into a store. Anywhere with lights. I'm sending someone. She ducked into the nearest place, a small convenience store. The owner looked up, startled, as she stood dripping on the tile floor. You okay, miss? I'm fine, she said, breathing hard. Just waiting for someone. Through the glass door, Aaron stood across the street, unmoving. His expression was unreadable. He didn't come closer. He just watched. 10 minutes passed. Then, headlights. A black SUV pulled up to the curb. The passenger door opened, and a man stepped out, tall, silver-haired, calm. Elena Rivera, he asked. She nodded. Mr. Moretti sent me. Stay here. He crossed the street toward Aaron. She couldn't hear the conversation through the glass, but she saw Aaron's posture change, anger melting into confusion, then fear. The silver-haired man handed him a phone, said something, waited. Aaron listened. His face drained of color. Then he turned and walked away, disappearing into the rain. The man returned, nodded once to her through the glass, and left. The SUV pulled away. A minute later, her phone buzzed again. A text from Luke. You're safe. He won't come back tonight. Elena sank onto a stool by the counter, trembling. The shop owner handed her a paper cup of tea without asking questions. She didn't speak until her breathing slowed. That night, she sat by her window long after midnight, watching the rain. Aaron was gone. But she couldn't stop wondering what had been said to make him leave so fast, and whether she even wanted to know. The next morning, she found a message in her inbox, not from Aaron, but from an unknown number with no name. You're under protection now. Don't worry about last night. She deleted it immediately. But when she looked outside, the same black car was parked down the street. At Bellissimo that evening, she walked in to find Luke already there. No conversation, no greeting. Just a quiet nod, like two people who shared a secret too big for words. He stayed through her entire shift, eating slowly, occasionally glancing toward the door. When she passed his table to refill water, he said simply, "Did he come back?" "No," she said. "He won't," he replied, voice certain. "What did you do?" she asked before she could stop herself. His eyes met hers, steady, unreadable. "I had a conversation with him." What kind of conversation? The kind that ends things. She should have been afraid. She wasn't. Instead, a strange peace settled over her, fragile, but real. As she turned to leave, he added quietly, "If you need anything, you call me. No matter the hour." "I don't want to be a problem," she said. "You're not a problem," he said. "You're a person under my protection now." The words sent a shiver through her, not fear, exactly, but something deeper. A sense that her life had crossed a line she could never uncross. That night, she dreamed of two voices, one soft, one sharp. Aaron's saying, "You're mine." Luke's saying, "You're safe." When she woke, she wasn't sure which frightened her more. The next few weeks slid by in a strange new rhythm. Elena's world had narrowed to 3 places: her apartment, Bellissimo, and the quiet streets in between. But within that small circle, everything had changed. Aaron had disappeared. No messages, no calls, no sightings. It was as if he'd vanished into the gray air of Chicago. Elena didn't ask how. She didn't want to ask. Some part of her already knew Luke had made sure of it. And though that truth should have scared her, it didn't. It made her feel safe for the first time in months. Luke's presence had become a steady, wordless rhythm in her life. He came to Bellissimo most nights, sitting at his usual bar stool, watching with quiet patience. He rarely spoke more than a few words to her, but somehow those words always found their way into her thoughts long after he was gone. On a Monday evening, just before closing, he broke the pattern. "Elena," he said as she wiped down a nearby table. She turned. "Yes." He motioned to the empty seat beside him at the bar. "Sit for a minute." "I'm still on shift," she said gently. "Robert won't mind," Luke replied, sliding a folded bill across the counter. "I already asked him." She hesitated. Then she Saturday. He watched her for a moment, studying her face the way an artist might study a painting, with quiet focus, no rush. "You've been calmer lately," he said. "Sleeping better?" She blinked. "How would you know that?" He smiled faintly. "You stopped jumping every time the door opens. You move differently when you're not expecting someone to grab you." She looked down at her hands. "I guess I'm trying to believe it's over." "It is," he said simply. "He won't come back." The finality in his tone left no space for doubt. "Can I ask," she began, her voice small, "what happened to him?" Luke's expression didn't change. He was reminded to stay away. That was all he said. That was all she needed to hear. He leaned back on the bar stool, his voice softening. "Tell me something, Elena. What do you want now that you're not looking over your shoulder anymore?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, when fear stops running your life, what's left? What do you want to do?" She hesitated. "I don't know. I guess I want to create again. I used to draw every night. I stopped when things got bad. It just felt pointless." "Then start again," he said. "It's not that easy." "It's exactly that easy," Luke said. "You start, and you keep going. Everything else finds its place." She gave a small laugh. "You make it sound simple." "It's not simple," he admitted. "But it's worth it." They sat in silence for a while. The restaurant was nearly empty now, only a few diners finishing dessert. The soft notes of piano music drifted through the quiet. Then Luke said, "I meant what I said before. About helping with your design work. Luke. Don't refuse yet." He reached into his jacket and slid a small folder across the counter. "Open it." Inside were 3 sleek business cards: boutique hotel, cafe, and a small architecture firm. Each one had notes written in neat black ink. "Needs new branding. Mention my name." Her eyes widened. "You did this." "They're good clients," he said. "And they pay on time." "Why would you do that for me?" He met her gaze without flinching. "Because you remind me of someone I used to know. Someone who needed a chance." Elena looked down at the cards. Her throat tightened. "I don't want to take advantage." Luke's tone stayed even. "You're not. You're earning it." Before she could respond, a burst of laughter came from the far end of the restaurant, a group of young men leaving their table. It broke the fragile moment between them. Luke stood, buttoning his coat. "Think about it," he said. "Call those numbers if you want. If not, throw them away. Either choice is yours." He placed a few bills on the counter, enough to cover dinner 10 times over, and left without another word. That night, Elena sat at her kitchen table with the folder in front of her. The rain tapped softly on the window, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something close to hope. She picked up a pencil and began to draw again. By the end of the week, Bellissimo buzzed with whispers. "Elena, I heard something," Mia said as they prepped for the dinner rush. "What now?" Elena asked, tying her apron. "People are talking," Mia said in a low voice. "They're saying you're involved with him." "With who?" Mia gave her a look. "Don't play dumb." "With Luciano Moretti." Elena froze. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" Mia said. "He's here every night. He talks to you and no one else. And you're suddenly getting offers from fancy clients that drop his name." Elena frowned. "You think I asked him for help?" "I think powerful men don't do anything for free," Mia said quietly. The words stung more than she expected. She tried to focus on her work, but the whispers kept floating through the night. A few co-workers glanced her way when they thought she wasn't looking. Customers looked curious, not unkind, but watchful. Every rumor felt like another thread pulling at her piece. Later that evening, Luke arrived as usual, dark suit, unreadable expression, quiet dominance that filled the room without effort. He sat at the bar, nodded at her once, and ordered his dinner. Elena could feel the eyes around her, co-workers, waiters, even the manager subtly watching them. She tried to ignore it, but the weight of attention pressed harder with every passing minute. When she finally approached to refill his glass, she leaned close enough to whisper, "People are talking." Luke didn't look surprised. "Of course they are. You don't seem worried." He stirred his drink lazily. "Why would I be? People always talk about what they don't understand." She frowned. "You don't care what they think, do you?" Elena hesitated. "I care that they think I'm only here because of you." Luke set his glass down and turned to face her fully. "And are you?" The question hit harder than she expected. "No," she said finally. "I earned my place here." "Then don't let their noise make you forget that." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the hum of the restaurant faded away. Then Robert's voice broke the spell. "Elena, table 5's ready for dessert." She nodded quickly and stepped back, heart pounding. After the dinner rush, Luke stayed behind as the staff cleaned up. The restaurant emptied until only a few lights glowed near the bar. "Walk with me," he said as she gathered her things. "Where?" "Just around the block." She hesitated, every rule of survival whispering don't go. But something in his voice, the quiet steadiness, made her say yes. They stepped into the cold night. The rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and electric. Luke lit a cigarette, the ember glowing faintly as they walked. "You're handling the attention better than I expected," he said. "I'm trying," she replied. "But it's hard. I'm not used to people looking at me." "They're not looking at you," he said. "They're looking at what they think you represent." "What's that supposed to mean?" "You represent a choice," Luke said. "You remind them that power can notice anyone, even someone quiet. It unsettles people." Elena frowned. "I don't want to unsettle anyone." "You don't have to want it," he said. "You just do." They stopped at a corner under a streetlight. The city buzzed softly around them, cars in the distance, voices carried on the wind. "You shouldn't care about their gossip," he said. "They'll forget it as soon as something else catches their attention." "I don't want your name making my life harder," she said, voice low. "I already know what it feels like to have someone control my story." Luke studied her face for a long moment, then said, "I don't control people, Elena. I remove the ones who try." She met his eyes, steady, dark, unflinching. For a moment, she almost asked what he meant. Then she decided not to. The next morning, she woke to an email from one of the business cards he'd given her. The architecture firm wanted to hire her for a logo project, good pay, short timeline. Her hands trembled as she typed her reply. "Yes. I'd love to work with you." She spent the entire day sketching, losing herself in lines and shapes. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of control returning, her own future forming beneath her hands. That evening, she arrived at work early. Mia was already there, arranging cutlery. "I saw your post," Mia said. "Congrats on the new job." Elena smiled. "Thanks." Mia hesitated, then added, "You really think you can handle being around him?" "Luke, I mean." "I don't know," Elena said honestly. "But he hasn't asked for anything from me. Not once." "That's what scares me," Mia murmured. "Men like him don't have to ask." Later that night, Bellissimo felt unusually tense. The crowd was loud, the air thick with perfume and the sharp scent of wine. Luke wasn't there at first, and part of her felt both relieved and disappointed. Then, just before closing, she saw him step inside, late, unannounced, his expression unreadable. He sat down, ordered nothing. Just waited. When she approached, he looked up at her. "You took the job," he said. She blinked. "You knew." "I always know," he said with a small smirk. "Congratulations." "Thank you," she said softly. "I wouldn't have found it without you." Luke shook his head. "You found it because you're good. I only opened the door. You walked through it." The words warmed something inside her that she didn't know needed warmth. "Just be careful," he added, his tone shifting. "Not everyone will like that you're connected to me." Some people might try to use you to reach me. Her heart skipped. Use me how? Luke's eyes darkened. By getting close. By pretending to help. By making you doubt yourself. If that happens, you tell me immediately. Promise me. She hesitated, then nodded. I promise. Good. He finished his drink and stood to leave. As he passed her, he said quietly, and Elena, don't let anyone make you feel small again. Not even me. When he left, she stood frozen, her pulse racing. Because for the first time, she realized what he truly was, not just dangerous, but deliberate. Every word, every look, every act of protection was calculated. And yet, despite that, she wasn't afraid. She was drawn in deeper than she had ever meant to be. That night, when she got home, she found an envelope slipped under her door. No name, no note, just a single photograph. It was her, leaving Bellissimo earlier that week. A shadow stood across the street in the background. Aaron. Her breath caught. She stared at the photo until her vision blurred and then, without hesitation, she pulled out her phone. And called Luke. The following evening, Bellissimo glowed brighter than usual. Friday nights were always crowded, families, couples, friends in laughter, but for Elena, everything felt dim behind the noise. The photo she'd found under her door haunted her. Aaron's blurred outline in the distance, half-shadowed by a streetlight, it was proof he hadn't vanished after all. She'd called Luke the night she found it. He had answered instantly, as if he'd been waiting. Stay inside, he'd said. Don't open the door for anyone. I'll handle it. He hadn't called again. She hadn't seen him since. By the time her shift started, her exhaustion was visible. She smiled when she had to, took orders automatically, but her eyes kept drifting toward the door. Around 8:30, as she was clearing a table, Robert called her name. Elena. There's someone here for you. Her stomach tightened. She turned, and there he was. Luke stood near the entrance in a charcoal coat, the collar turned up against the wind, his gaze steady on her. The restaurant buzzed softly around him, but it all seemed to fade away when he looked at her. He gestured slightly. Come here. She crossed the room. I'm working, she said quietly. Not tonight, Luke replied. You're coming with me. I can't just. He handed Robert a thick envelope. For the night's loss. Robert opened his mouth, then closed it again and nodded. Elena looked between them, confused. Luke, what's going on? Dinner, he said. Somewhere quieter. Before she could argue, he was already holding the door open. Outside, the city was cold but alive, streets glistening from a recent drizzle, lights flickering across puddles. A black car waited by the curb. Luke opened the door for her. Inside, the car smelled faintly of leather and smoke. Neither of them spoke during the drive. The city passed by like a dream, tall buildings, neon reflections, the hum of traffic. Finally, the car pulled up to a restaurant she'd never seen before. It was tucked between high-rises, its entrance marked only by a brass door and soft light. Inside, the air was warm, filled with the scent of roasted herbs and candle smoke. Luke led her to a private table near the window. Is this yours? She asked softly. He smiled faintly. I don't own everything I visit. You could have told me, she said. I would have changed. You're fine, he said simply. You always are. The words settled between them, disarming in their calm certainty. They ordered pasta, wine, nothing extravagant. Yet the setting made everything feel different, almost unreal. Luke leaned back in his chair, studying her the way he always did, direct, unreadable. You didn't tell me about the photo, he said. I was afraid you'd be angry, she admitted. I'm not angry, he said. But I don't like surprises. When did you find it? Yesterday morning. It was under my door. Luke nodded slowly. He's playing games now. Can't you make him stop? He met her eyes. I already did. Which means this isn't him acting alone. She frowned. What does that mean? It means someone helped him, Luke said. Someone who wants to get my attention. Her pulse quickened. Because of me. Because of me, he corrected quietly. Your leverage. Elena's voice trembled. I don't want to be anyone's leverage. I know, he said. That's why I'm ending it. She didn't ask how. She didn't want to know. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The waiter poured wine, and the soft clink of glass filled the silence. Luke finally said, "My mother stayed with a man like that. She thought she could fix him. I used to think she was brave for trying. Now I think she was just afraid." Elena listened quietly. "What happened to her?" "She didn't make it out," Luke said. "He took everything from her, including her voice." The simplicity of his words carried more weight than any anger could. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He nodded once. "That's why I don't tolerate men who touch what isn't theirs." She looked down at her hands, unsure what to say. Luke's voice softened. "You're stronger than you think, Elena. You just don't know it yet." Her eyes met his. "You make me feel safe. You shouldn't need me to," he said. "But until you don't, I'll be here." After dinner, they stepped out into the night. The city felt quieter now, the cold air sharp and clean. When the car stopped outside her building, she turned to him. "Luke, why me? You could help anyone." He looked at her for a long moment. "Because you didn't ask for help. You just survived." He reached for her hand, brushed his thumb over her knuckles. "And because I like the way you look at me, like you're not afraid, even when you should be." Her breath caught. "I don't know if that's bravery or stupidity." "Both," he said with a small smile. He let go of her hand. "Get some rest. You'll need it." "For what?" "For whatever comes next." When she looked back as she entered the building, he was still there, watching, silent, certain, and impossibly steady. Days turned into weeks, and something between them shifted slowly, quietly, like a tide creeping in. Luke kept his distance but never disappeared. He called her sometimes, short messages, practical things. "Don't walk home alone tonight," or "the client's payment cleared." He had found her more work too, logos for small businesses, a cafe menu redesign, even a boutique's full rebranding project. It was as if his network opened invisible doors for her. And yet, despite the growing sense of stability, the shadows never left. One afternoon, she finished her shift early and decided to walk home through the park. The sky was pale gray, trees stripped of leaves, the wind sharp against her face. She breathed in the cold and felt almost normal again until she saw the man on the bench. He wasn't Aaron, but something about his stillness set her nerves alight. He wasn't looking at her, but she could feel his awareness, the kind of quiet that wasn't casual. She walked faster. By the time she reached her building, the same black car was parked outside. The silver-haired man from before stepped out, nodding. "Everything all right, Ms. Rivera?" "You're still watching me?" she asked. "Until Mr. Moretti says otherwise." She sighed. "Doesn't that ever get exhausting?" He smiled faintly. "Less exhausting than what happens when we stop." That night, she called Luke. "You still have people following me." "I prefer the word protecting," he said calmly. "I don't need protection." "You might not. But they're staying anyway. You can't just decide that." "Yes, I can." His tone wasn't arrogant, just factual. Unapologetic. Elena sighed. "You don't give people choices, do you?" "I give them safety," he said. "That's better." She hesitated. "You sound like you're used to control." "I am," he admitted. "Control keeps people alive in my world." "Maybe," she said softly. "But it also keeps people from living." There was a pause on the line. Then Luke said quietly, "You're not wrong." A week later, he invited her to his home. Not his restaurant haunts, not some private office, but his actual home. It wasn't a mansion like she'd imagined. It was a penthouse, minimal, dark wood and marble, overlooking the glittering sprawl of the city. "This is beautiful," she said, stepping inside. "It's quiet," he said simply. "That's all I need." He poured her a drink, wine again, though she barely touched it. They sat by the floor-to-ceiling window. The skyline glowed below them, silent and vast. "You built all this," she said. "The restaurants, the businesses, everything." "Why?" "Because power keeps people from hurting you," he said. "When you have enough of it, no one touches what's yours." She turned to look at him. "And what's yours now?" His gaze held hers. You tell me. Her heart skipped. Luke. I'm not asking for an answer, he said softly. Just the truth. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. I don't know. That's an answer, he murmured. They sat in silence. Rain began to fall again, soft against the glass. After a while, she said, do you ever regret the things you've done? Luke was quiet for a long time. Then, no. But I regret the things I couldn't stop. Like your mother. He nodded once. Like her. Something in his voice, something fragile beneath all the steel, made her chest tighten. You're not like them, she said quietly. He gave a small, sad smile. Everyone says that until I remind them I am. Then remind me, she said, surprising herself. Luke's gaze sharpened. Careful, Elena. You don't know what you're asking for. Maybe I want to. He leaned forward slightly, his voice barely above a whisper. If I show you who I am, you'll never be able to pretend otherwise. You'll have to see everything, the good and the ugly. I already do, she said. They stared at each other across the space between them. The city lights flickered over their faces like tiny fires. Then Luke stood and turned toward the window, his reflection dark against the glow. Do you know why I watch you? He asked. She hesitated. Because you don't trust me to be safe. He shook his head. Because you remind me of what I used to be before I learned how to fight back. You make me remember things I buried a long time ago. He turned then, meeting her gaze again. You're the only person I don't know how to control, Elena. And that's why you scare me. Her breath caught. I don't want to scare you, she said softly. You don't, he said. But you change the way I see everything. That's dangerous for both of us. The silence that followed was thick with all the words neither of them could say. Finally, Luke stepped closer, his expression unreadable. It's late. I'll have someone drive you home. She stood too. Luke. He stopped her with a look. Don't thank me. Just be careful. There's a war coming, and you're too close to it. A war? He didn't answer. When she reached the elevator, he said one last thing, voice quiet but firm. Elena, if anyone ever tries to use you to reach me, anyone, you call me first. Don't trust anyone else. I promise. The elevator doors closed. As she descended, her reflection shimmered against the mirrored walls. She barely recognized the woman staring back, still herself, but changed. Safer, yes. But also standing on the edge of something far darker than she could have imagined. The city felt different now, sharper at the edges, quieter at night. Elena had grown used to seeing the black car parked outside her apartment, the occasional suited figure at a cafe, the way shadows seemed to watch over her. It should have been unnerving, but it wasn't. It was safety, in its strangest form. Her design work was thriving. The architecture firm loved her logo, the boutique owner wanted her for another project, and the bakery had invited her to design their new packaging. For the first time in years, she had something that was hers: work, income, purpose. But beneath the success, something darker was shifting. Luke had been quieter lately. He still called, still checked in, but his tone had changed, colder, more distant. There were nights he didn't appear at Bellissimo at all, and when he did, his eyes carried the look of someone who hadn't slept. One evening, as Elena locked up after a late shift, a voice came from behind her. You shouldn't walk alone. She turned quickly. It was Enzo, Luke's right-hand man, the same silver-haired man who had spoken to Aaron that night in the rain. He stood under the streetlight, hands in his coat pockets, expression unreadable. Elena Rivera, he said with a small nod. You're harder to keep track of than you think. She frowned. I didn't realize I needed tracking. Not tracking, he said. Watching. She sighed. That's supposed to make me feel better. He smiled faintly. You're funny. I see why he likes you. His tone carried no flirtation, just quiet amusement. Luke's been busy, he continued. Meetings. Pressure. You know how this life goes. I don't, actually, she said. No, Enzo agreed. You don't. That's what worries me. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think he's just a man who helps people. But there are people who would burn down this city to hurt him. And right now, They know you exist. Her breath caught. Because of Aaron? Partly, Enzo said. Aaron was a useful distraction. Someone wanted Luke off balance, and your situation gave them that opening. Elena felt her stomach twist. So I'm a target. Not yet, Enzo said. But you could be. She looked away. Does Luke know? He knows everything, Enzo said. But he won't tell you because he doesn't want to scare you. That's not protection, she said quietly. That's control. Enzo's gaze softened. Then maybe he's just trying to protect you the only way he knows how. They stood in silence for a moment, the wind moving through the street. Then Enzo said, "You're changing him, you know. That's dangerous." Changing him how? He's starting to care, Enzo said simply. Luke doesn't care about people. He manages them, uses them, removes them when necessary. But he listens to you. He doesn't listen to anyone. She didn't know how to respond. Enzo gave a small nod toward the corner. Go home. Lock your doors. If anyone knocks after midnight, don't answer. What's happening? She asked. He hesitated, then said, something's moving in the dark. And it's not done with him or with you. Before she could ask more, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the night like smoke. The next few days passed in uneasy quiet. Luke didn't call. The black car still watched her building, but even that presence felt thinner, more strained. By Friday, she couldn't stand it anymore. She took the train across the river, to the address Luke had once mentioned as his office, a nondescript building downtown, more shadow than structure. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and steel. Men in dark suits moved quietly through the halls. When she gave her name at the desk, the guard pressed a button and said, "He'll see you." Luke's office was large but minimal, dark wood, a wall of windows, city lights spread beneath them. He stood by the glass, hands in his pockets, back turned to her. "You shouldn't be here," he said without turning. "Then you should have answered my calls," she said. He turned then, his expression unreadable. "You don't understand the timing. Then explain it to me." Luke studied her face for a moment, then exhaled. "There's been a problem with one of my operations. Nothing you need to worry about." "That's not an answer." He gave a faint smile. "No, it's not. Enzo came to see me," she said. Luke's expression darkened instantly. "When?" "2 nights ago. He said people know about me. That I'm a target." Luke stepped closer, his voice lower now. "You shouldn't listen to everything Enzo says." "Why? Because he's wrong or because he's right?" Luke stopped a few feet away, the tension in him barely contained. "Because it's not your concern." Her voice rose. "It is my concern if my life is in danger." He flinched, not from her words, but from her tone. For a second, the calm veneer cracked, and something raw flickered behind his eyes. Finally, he said, "You're under my protection." "That won't change." "I don't want to be protected," she said. "I want to understand." Luke looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "Understanding comes with a price you don't want to pay." "Then why me, Luke?" she asked softly. "Why pull me into this world at all?" He looked away. "Because I didn't expect to care." The confession hit harder than she was ready for. Luke turned back to the window. "Go home, Elena. Please." The word please sounded strange coming from him. It carried weight, almost regret. She left without another word. Outside, the city lights shimmered on wet pavement. For the first time, she wondered if safety in Luke's world came with invisible chains, and if she was already too deep to find her way out. It happened 3 nights later. A quiet evening shift, a cold drizzle, the same routine she had repeated 100 times before. The restaurant was half full, filled with the murmur of conversation and the faint sound of piano. She was clearing a table near the window when the door opened and every muscle in her body tensed. Aaron. He looked thinner, his eyes hollow, movements sharp and jittery. His suit was wrinkled, his face drawn. He smiled, the kind of smile that hid something broken underneath. "Hey, Liv." Elena froze. "What are you doing here?" "Relax," he said softly. "I just came to see you. I miss you." Robert appeared instantly. "Sir, you're not allowed here." Aaron ignored him. You really think he can protect you? Elena's pulse raced. Aaron, please don't. You think you know who he is? Aaron said, stepping closer. You think he's your savior? He's worse than me, Liv. Much worse. Mia grabbed her arm. Elena, come on. Before she could move, the door burst open again. Two men entered, strangers, rough-looking, their movements too deliberate to be customers. Luke's men reacted before anyone else could. The restaurant erupted into chaos. Down, one of them shouted, pulling Elena behind the counter as glass shattered. A gunshot cracked the air. Screams followed. Aaron stumbled backward, eyes wide, clutching his arm where blood now bloomed. The two attackers were already down, silent on the floor. The whole thing had lasted less than 30 seconds. Then Luke was there. He came through the door like a storm, coat drenched, eyes burning cold. He didn't speak. He crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt beside her, checking her quickly, his hands steady on her shoulders. You're not hurt, he said. It wasn't a question. I'm fine, she stammered. He turned to his men. Get her out. Elena shook her head. Luke, what just happened? An attempt, he said, his voice flat. They wanted to send a message. To you? Yes. She looked past him, where Aaron sat slumped against the wall, pale and bleeding. He's hurt, she said. Luke's gaze flicked toward Aaron. He made his choice. Luke, please, she said. For a moment, his expression softened, barely. Then he nodded toward one of his men. Patch him up. Then get him out of my sight. As they helped Aaron to his feet, Luke turned back to her. This is why I told you not to come near me tonight. I didn't know. I know, he said quietly. That's why you're still alive. Outside, the night was thick with sirens and rain. Luke guided her into a car waiting at the curb. The city lights smeared across the windows as they drove, her reflection pale and shaken in the glass. When they reached his penthouse, he poured her a glass of water and sat across from her. They knew where you'd be, he said. Which means someone close leaked it. Enzo. Luke shook his head. No. He's loyal. But someone wants to test me, see how far I'll go to protect you. Her voice trembled. You think it's because of what happened with Aaron? I think Aaron was just a tool, Luke said. They wanted me distracted, emotional. They got what they wanted. She looked at him, really looked at the man who could command a room with a glance, who had built an empire from silence and control. He looked tired. Haunted, even. Luke, she said softly, you can't keep living like this. Always fighting shadows. His eyes met hers. It's the only life I know. It doesn't have to be. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. You think I can walk away? That they'd just let me go? No, she said. But maybe you can find something worth staying alive for. He looked at her for a long time, then said, maybe I already have. The words hung between them, quiet and dangerous. She stood, moved to the window. The city spread out below, rain-slick streets, distant sirens, the endless hum of life. Behind her, Luke said, you should stay here tonight. It's not safe to go home. She turned to face him. And tomorrow? We'll deal with tomorrow when it comes. She stayed. She didn't sleep much, too many thoughts, too many ghosts. She kept replaying the sound of the gunfire, the look on Aaron's face, the calm precision of Luke's men. In the dark, she realized something that scared her more than the violence. She wasn't afraid of Luke anymore. She trusted him completely. And that, she knew, was the most dangerous thing of all. Morning light slipped through the tall windows of Luke's penthouse, pale and cold. The city below was already moving, cars, sirens, the endless hum of Chicago. Inside, it was quiet. Elena sat at the kitchen counter, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. She hadn't changed out of the oversized shirt Luke had handed her the night before. Every sound, every flicker of light, still carried echoes of gunfire. Luke stood by the window, speaking softly into his phone in Italian. His voice was calm but edged like a blade. When he hung up, he turned to her. You didn't sleep. Neither did you, she said. He gave a small nod. There's no news yet. The two men from the restaurant were connected to a cartel that's been trying to move in on my territory. Territory, she repeated. You make it sound like a chessboard. He didn't smile. It is. She looked down at her hands. And me? What am I on that board? His gaze softened. You're the peace I protect at all costs. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be, he said quietly. She pushed her coffee aside. You said someone close to you betrayed you. Have you found out who? Luke's jaw tightened. Not yet. But I will. Luke, she hesitated. What are you going to do when you find them? He met her eyes. You don't want to know. I do, she insisted. Because every time you say you're protecting me, someone disappears. I can't pretend not to see that anymore. He studied her face for a long time before answering. In my world, loyalty is the only law. When it's broken, people die. That's not cruelty. It's balance. Elena shook her head. That sounds like justification. It's survival. The tension between them stretched thin. Finally, Luke sighed and reached for her hand, his touch surprisingly gentle. You shouldn't have to understand this, Elena. You should just live. I am living, she said. But I can't ignore what's keeping me alive. They sat in silence for a while, the distance between them both invisible and impossible to cross. Later that day, Luke left with Enzo to meet his associates. The apartment felt emptier without him, too big, too quiet. Elena tried to distract herself by sketching, but every stroke of the pencil came out sharp, angry. By evening, she couldn't stay inside anymore. She took the elevator down, pulled her coat tight, and walked through the drizzle. Her feet led her to Bellissimo out of habit. The restaurant had reopened, though parts of it still bore traces of the chaos: a crack in a mirror, a replaced pane of glass. Robert met her at the door, concern etched across his face. Elena, you shouldn't be here, he said. I just wanted to see if everyone was all right. We're fine. But what happened that night? The police were here asking questions. They said it looked professional, not random. She hesitated. It wasn't random. Robert lowered his voice. That man you've been seeing, he's involved, isn't he? She looked away. It's complicated. I don't need details, Robert said. But if you care about him, be careful. Men like that bring storms wherever they go. She gave a small, tired smile. The storm's already here. When she returned to Luke's penthouse, he was waiting. His coat was still wet from the rain. Where were you? He asked, voice calm but cold. I needed air. You had guards outside. I don't need guards every time I step out, she said. He stepped closer. Yes, you do. The sharpness in his tone made her flinch. He noticed and immediately softened. Elena, listen to me. These people don't care who you are. They only care what you mean to me. That makes you a target. And what do I mean to you? She asked. His silence was answer enough. She turned away, heart pounding. You can't keep deciding everything for me. He reached out, catching her wrist gently. You don't understand. I've already lost too much. I won't lose you too. Her voice broke. Then maybe you shouldn't have let me in at all. He released her hand slowly. Maybe I couldn't help it. That night, Luke received a call that changed everything. Elena was half asleep on the couch when his phone buzzed. He answered in Italian, listened for several seconds, then went completely still. What is it? She asked. He hung up, his jaw clenched. They hit one of our warehouses. South Side. 3 men dead. Who did? He looked at her, eyes dark. The same people who came after you. What are you going to do? He didn't answer. He was already moving toward the door, grabbing his coat. Luke, wait. He turned back just long enough to say, stay inside. No matter what you hear tonight. Then he was gone. Hours passed. Rain turned to thunder. From her window, Elena could see flashes of light far across the city, distant, silent, like lightning that didn't belong to the sky. When Luke returned near dawn, his clothes were soaked, his expression carved in stone. His hands were streaked faintly with blood. She rose from the couch. Luke. It's done, he said, cutting her off. What does that mean? It means they won't come for you again. She wanted to ask what he'd done, but the exhaustion in his eyes stopped her. He looked like a man who'd given another piece of himself away. She reached for him without thinking, resting a hand on his arm. He didn't pull away. For a long time, they stood there, silent, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like gravity. Finally, she whispered, "How many lines do you cross before there's no coming back?" Luke's voice was barely audible. "I crossed that line a long time ago." The city woke slowly that morning, grey skies and restless wind sweeping the streets clean. Elena sat by the window, sketchbook open on her lap. Her lines were different now, bolder, heavier. She wasn't the same person who had walked into Bellissimo months ago. Luke slept in the next room, though sleep wasn't quite the word. He lay still, his breathing shallow, caught somewhere between rest and vigilance. When he finally stirred, the first thing he said was, "You're still here." "I told you I wasn't leaving," she replied. He smiled faintly. "You should have. But I didn't." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then I'll stop trying to make you." That small surrender felt bigger than it sounded. Over the next few weeks, life began to settle into a fragile routine. Elena continued her design work, now from the safety of Luke's penthouse. His world, once hidden, became more visible to her, the quiet meetings in the study, the coded phone calls, the men who came and went at all hours. He never hid the truth anymore, but he didn't flaunt it either. It was just part of who he was, woven into every breath. One evening, she found him standing on the balcony, cigarette smoke curling in the wind. "Do you ever wish you'd chosen differently?" she asked. Luke exhaled slowly. "Every man who survives this long wishes that. But regret doesn't change anything. It just keeps you awake." "Maybe that's why you never sleep," she said softly. He smiled without humor. "Maybe." They stood together in silence, the city lights glittering below. A week later, Luke arranged for her to open a small design studio. He rented a space downtown, a clean, sunlit room with tall windows and white walls. "This is too much," she said when he handed her the keys. "It's not a gift," he replied. "It's an investment." "In what?" "In your freedom," he said simply. "So you never have to depend on anyone again." She stared at the keys in her hand. "Luke, I don't know how to thank you." "Don't," he said. "Just make it worth it." She opened the studio the following week. Her first clients came quickly, mostly small businesses connected to Luke's network, but soon strangers began finding her too. She worked long hours, lost in colors and lines. It felt like healing through creation. For the first time in years, she could breathe without fear. But safety in Luke's world was never permanent. Late one evening, as she locked up the studio, she noticed a car parked across the street. It wasn't one of Luke's. The driver's face was hidden in shadow. Her pulse quickened. She started walking faster, but the car followed slowly, headlights off. She pulled out her phone and called Luke. He answered instantly. "Where are you?" "Near the studio." "Someone's following me." "Get inside somewhere bright," he ordered. "Now." She ducked into a nearby cafe, heart pounding. Through the window, she saw the car still idling. Luke arrived less than 10 minutes later. He entered without a word, scanned the street, then turned to her. "Come with me." "What was that?" she asked. "Leftover trouble," he said. "Someone testing boundaries again." She frowned. "I thought you ended this." "I did. But fear makes people stupid." They drove back in silence. When they reached his building, she finally said, "You can't fight the whole world forever." Luke's voice was quiet but certain. "I don't need to. Just the part that touches you." She didn't know whether to be comforted or terrified. That night, as she watched him move through the dim apartment, checking locks, answering calls, giving quiet orders, she realized something. The danger wasn't just his. It was theirs now. And despite the fear, she didn't want to leave it behind. A few days later, Enzo visited the studio. He leaned against the doorway, watching her sketch. "You've done good work," he said. "Thanks," she said. "You don't strike me as the art type." He smiled faintly. "I'm not." But I know what it means when someone builds something that's theirs. That takes strength. She glanced up. You think I'm strong? I think you have to be, he said. Anyone standing next to Luke has to be. Standing next to him, she echoed. Not behind him. Enzo's grin widened. He wouldn't have it any other way. He turned to leave, then paused. You're good for him, you know. You remind him he's still human. She smiled sadly. I'm not sure he wants to be. Maybe not, Enzo said. But he needs to be. That evening, Luke joined her at the studio after closing. He looked tired but peaceful, a rarity in his world. I like this place, he said. It smells like paint and sunlight. That's the goal, she said with a small laugh. He watched her gather her sketches. You've built something real here, Elena. Something untouched by what I am. She shook her head. Nothing about me is untouched by you. He smiled faintly. Then maybe that's not a bad thing. She looked at him then, really looked, the hard lines softened, the steel beneath his calm finally visible. Luke, she said quietly, do you ever think we'll be free of all this? He hesitated. Freedom isn't the same thing as safety. You can have one, not both. Then I'll take freedom, she said. Luke reached for her hand. Then I'll make sure you have it. That night, she dreamed of her old life, the small apartment, the fear, the endless waiting. When she woke, Luke was still asleep beside her, and for the first time, she felt like the past couldn't touch her anymore. Whatever came next, war, peace, danger, or quiet, she knew she would face it unbroken. Winter descended fast. The Chicago wind cut deeper, and the river turned to glass under the moonlight. Elena's days blurred between the quiet of her studio and the constant hum of Luke's world around her, security calls, unmarked cars, and faces she never learned the names of. But in all that noise, she'd found calm. Her business was growing, she was designing for real clients, and the nightmares that once haunted her had faded. Luke was busier than ever, but he always found his way to her, sometimes late, sometimes silent, but always there. Until the morning he wasn't. It started with a message from Mia. We need to talk. It's about Aaron. Elena froze. She hadn't heard his name in weeks. She met Mia at a small cafe on the corner of Halsted, a warm place with the smell of cinnamon and coffee beans. Mia looked anxious, eyes darting toward the windows. What's wrong? Elena asked. Mia leaned in. Aaron's alive. Elena's stomach twisted. What are you talking about? Of course he's alive. No, Mia said quickly. I mean he's back. I saw him. At the hospital, where my cousin works. He was in a cast. He told her he's been working for someone. Elena felt her blood go cold. Working for who? Mia hesitated. He didn't say. But when he mentioned your name, the nurse said he got quiet, said something about fixing things. Fixing things, Elena whispered. Mia reached across the table. You have to tell that man of yours. Luke, right? He'll know what to do. Elena nodded slowly, but dread coiled in her chest. When she called Luke, his assistant answered. Mr. Moretti's in a meeting. It's important, Elena said. Tell him it's about Aaron. A pause. Then, he already knows. She froze. What? Mr. Moretti will contact you when he can, the assistant said before hanging up. By the time Luke arrived at her studio that evening, the sun had set. His presence filled the doorway, coat dusted with snow, eyes shadowed. You knew, she said before he could speak. Yes, he said simply. How long? A week. A week. Her voice broke. And you didn't tell me? Luke closed the door quietly. There was nothing you could do. He's being used. By who? By someone who wants me distracted. Again. She shook her head. You always say that. Like everyone is a pawn on your board. Maybe he just wants to talk to me. Luke's voice hardened. You don't believe that? No, she said, but I want to. He stepped closer. Elena, listen to me. He's dangerous because he's desperate. That makes him unpredictable. He's already crossed lines he can't uncross. And what about you? She asked quietly. How many lines have you crossed, Luke? He didn't answer. His silence was colder than the snow outside. 2 nights later, she got the call. A familiar voice, Aaron's, low and trembling. "Elena. I'm sorry. I didn't know what they'd make me do. Please. Meet me. Just once. I'll explain everything." She stood frozen by her desk, heart hammering. "Where are you?" "By the river. Warehouse near Fulton Market. Please. I just want to talk." Then the line went dead. Every instinct told her it was a trap. But a smaller voice, the one that still remembered the boy Aaron used to be, whispered, "What if it isn't?" She didn't call Luke. She didn't tell Enzo. She just grabbed her coat and left. The warehouse smelled of rust and rain. The river hissed quietly nearby. Aaron stepped from the shadows, thinner than she remembered, his face pale and drawn. "You shouldn't have come," he said softly. "Then why call me?" "Because I needed you to see me one last time." She frowned. "What does that mean?" He swallowed hard. "They said they'd let me go if I brought you here." Her stomach dropped. "Who?" Before he could answer, a door slammed open. Men poured in, armed, fast, ruthless. Elena stumbled back, heart pounding. Aaron grabbed her arm, panic flashing in his eyes. "Run." Gunfire exploded. The world shattered into noise and fear. A black SUV screeched outside. Luke's men burst through the side door, returning fire. Enzo led the charge, moving like shadow and thunder. Within seconds, the attackers were down. Smoke and silence followed. Luke himself appeared in the doorway, face like stone. His eyes went straight to her, checking, counting, furious and afraid all at once. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "No," she whispered. "But Aaron." He looked. Aaron lay slumped near the wall, bleeding from the shoulder. Luke turned to Enzo. "Get him out." "Alive." Enzo hesitated. "Alive." "Alive," Luke repeated sharply. Elena looked at him, confusion and relief twisting together. "Why?" Luke's voice was cold. "Because I want to know who he's working for before I decide what happens next." Later that night, in the quiet of the penthouse, Elena sat curled on the couch, a blanket around her shoulders. Luke stood near the window, his reflection fractured against the glass. "He was supposed to lure you to the river," Luke said. "They wanted you caught on camera, make it look like you were part of something dirty. I don't know who's funding them yet, but I will." Elena's voice trembled. "You saved him." "For now," Luke said. "Don't make me regret it." She stared at him. "He was manipulated, Luke. He's not like them." "He made a choice," Luke said. "So did I." She rose, walking toward him. "You could have killed him." He looked at her. "And you'd never forgive me if I had." Her throat tightened. "You're right." He stepped closer. "That's why I didn't." For days, the city seemed to hold its breath. News broke of a shootout by the river, the papers calling it gang violence, nothing unusual for Chicago. Aaron vanished again, taken into Luke's custody. Elena didn't ask where. She didn't need to. Sometimes, late at night, she caught Luke looking at her differently, not with hunger, not even with protectiveness, but with something heavier. A weight that said he understood what it meant to destroy and still want to be forgiven. A week later, Enzo found her at the studio. "He's awake," Enzo said simply. "Aaron?" He nodded. "Luke's questioning him now." She froze. "Where?" "You don't want to go there," Enzo warned. "Tell me." He hesitated, then sighed. "Old safe house on the west side. But if you go alone. Luke can't know I told you." The safe house was dim and cold, an old brick building tucked between warehouses. She slipped inside quietly, heart pounding. Voices echoed from below, Luke's, low and deliberate, Aaron's, hoarse with fear. "You were paid to deliver her," Luke said. "Who paid you?" "I don't know," Aaron choked. "I never saw him. He just called. Said if I did this, they'd clear my debt." "What debt?" Aaron hesitated. "The kind you can't pay with money." Luke was silent for a moment. Then, quietly, "I should end you here. Luke, please." Elena stepped out before she could stop herself. "Don't." Luke's head snapped toward her. "What are you doing here?" Stopping you from becoming the man you say you're not. Aaron looked at her, eyes glassy. Liv. Don't, she said softly. You almost got me killed. I'm sorry, he whispered. Luke's expression didn't change. He's not worth your mercy. Maybe not, she said. But I am. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, Luke turned to Enzo. Let him go. Enzo blinked. You're serious? Let him go, Luke repeated. Aaron's eyes widened. You'll regret this. Luke smiled thinly. No. You will. When the door closed behind Aaron, Luke turned to Elena. You disobeyed me. She nodded. I did. He stepped close enough that she could feel his breath. Don't ever do it again. I won't, she said softly. Not unless it's to save you. Snow fell thick the next evening, muffling the city's sound. Luke's world was stirring, phone calls, whispers, coded meetings, but he told Elena nothing. Enzo stopped by her studio the following afternoon. His coat was dusted with snow, his expression grim. You should go home, he said quietly. Why? Because tonight, there will be blood. Elena's heart stuttered. Luke. Enzo nodded. He's moving against the people who set Aaron up. This time, he's not leaving witnesses. She waited by the window that night, unable to work, unable to sleep. Outside, snow kept falling, painting the streets in silence. Around midnight, the city lit up, distant flashes, faint sounds of chaos carried on the wind. Then nothing. Hours later, the elevator door opened. Luke walked in, his coat streaked with snow and ash, eyes hollow. It's done, he said simply. She stood. How many? Enough. He poured himself a drink, hands steady. No one will come after you again. She approached slowly. You killed them. I removed threats, he said. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Elena looked at him, really looked. The exhaustion. The small tremor in his hand. The faint stain of smoke on his collar. She reached out, resting a hand against his chest. Does it ever stop? What? The part of you that has to keep fighting. Luke's voice was a whisper. If it stops, I die. She felt her throat tighten. Then maybe it's time to live instead. He looked at her then, truly looked, and something in his face softened, something she hadn't seen since the first night he'd spoken her name. He set the glass down, took her face in his hands. You make me forget the world, he said quietly. Then forget it, she whispered. The following days were strangely still. The city's undercurrent of violence quieted. No more whispers, no more cars parked outside her door. For once, the silence wasn't tension, it was peace. Luke's empire stood untouched. His enemies were gone. But victory didn't bring him joy. She noticed it in the way he lingered by the windows at night, cigarette burning low, staring into the skyline like he was searching for something he'd lost. One night, she said softly, you did what you had to. You kept your promise. He didn't turn. At what cost? You saved lives. I took them too. Elena crossed the room, wrapping her arms around him from behind. You can't undo the past, Luke. But you can choose what comes next. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. What comes next? Us, she said. Peace. Quiet. He exhaled, leaning back against her. You think we get to have that? Yes, she said. We've earned it. 2 weeks later, the first sign of spring broke through the snow. The city thawed, slow but certain. Elena's studio flourished, her designs hanging in cafes and storefronts across Chicago. Luke stopped by one afternoon, dressed in a dark coat, eyes lighter than she'd ever seen them. You look different, she said. I feel different, he replied. Peaceful? Almost. She smiled. That's close enough. He stepped closer, brushed a stray hair from her cheek. You turned my chaos into calm, he said softly. I don't know how. You let me, she said simply. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the skyline, they sat on her balcony with coffee and quiet music. The city buzzed below, alive but distant. Luke turned to her, eyes steady. Do you ever think about what it would have been like if we'd met differently? Somewhere normal? Elena smiled faintly. You're not the kind of man who belongs in normal. He chuckled softly. Neither are you anymore. She looked out at the city. Maybe that's okay. Luke nodded. It is. He reached for her hand. She took it without hesitation. For once, there were no threats, no shadows, no secrets between them, just the quiet truth of what they had built out of survival. And as night settled over Chicago, Luke whispered, "You're safe now. For good." Elena leaned against him, eyes closed. I know. In the distance, the river reflected the city lights, endless and unbroken, like the life they had forged, carved out of fire and consequence, but still standing. Spring arrived like a whisper over Chicago, rain that softened the hard edges, sunlight that crept between gray clouds, and a city slowly thawing from its long, bitter cold. The wind off the lake still carried a bite, but the streets no longer felt hostile. The world was learning how to breathe again. So was Elena. She woke each morning to quiet, not the anxious silence of fear, but peace. Her studio was full of light, her calendar full of work. She had clients waiting weeks in advance, all through word of mouth. For the first time in her life, her art wasn't an escape. It was a life. Luke still came and went in the same quiet rhythm, his life existing in shadows, hers in sunlight. But lately, she'd noticed something shifting in him. The sharp edges were dulling. His smile came easier. His phone rang less. It wasn't that the world around him had stopped being dangerous, it never would, but for the first time, he seemed to want something beyond control. One evening, she found him on the balcony of the penthouse, a glass of wine in his hand, the city glowing below. "You're thinking too hard," she said as she stepped beside him. Luke smirked faintly. "You always say that when I'm quiet." "Because when you're quiet, you're planning something," she teased. He gave a soft chuckle but didn't deny it. "Maybe I am." She leaned against the railing, brushing her hair from her face. "What are you planning this time?" He looked at her for a long moment, then said, "An exit." Her heart skipped. "What?" "I've been talking to Enzo," he said. "There's a way to step back, quietly, cleanly. The younger men can take over. I've built enough. I don't need to keep fighting forever." "You'd walk away?" "I'd try," he said, voice low. "If I did, I'd need somewhere to go that isn't made of marble and noise." She smiled softly. "You mean my studio isn't glamorous enough for a retired crime boss?" Luke laughed under his breath. "Your studio is the only place that feels real." For a moment, they just stood there, watching the skyline shimmer. Then she said quietly, "If you left, would you regret it?" He didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was almost a whisper. "Only if you weren't there." Elena turned to face him fully. "You've built a life out of power, Luke. You'd be trading it for, what? Coffee runs and quiet mornings?" He smiled faintly. "Exactly." She studied him. "Then what's stopping you?" "Old ghosts," he said. "Men who don't believe in peace. They'd see my exit as weakness." "Then let them," she said. "You've spent your life being the storm. Maybe it's time to be the calm." Luke looked at her for a long time, something unreadable in his gaze. Finally, he said, "You make it sound easy." "It's not easy," she said. "But it's worth it." Days turned to weeks, and Luke began to change in quiet, subtle ways. He stopped answering certain calls. Stopped attending meetings that once ruled his schedule. Enzo handled more of the business, always with the same unspoken understanding between them, something was ending. But peace never came without a fight. One night, while Elena was closing up her studio, she found a folded piece of paper slipped under the door. Her name was written in sharp ink. Inside, a single sentence. "He can't walk away. Neither can you." Her pulse quickened. She called Luke immediately. He arrived within minutes, his expression unreadable as he read the note. "Is it a threat?" she asked. "It's a warning," he said. "Someone still believes I owe them something. Can't you make them stop?" Luke's voice was calm but cold. "I will. But I need you to trust me one more time." "Always," she said. That weekend, Luke vanished. No call, no message, nothing. Elena tried not to panic. Enzo wouldn't tell her anything except, he's cleaning up loose ends. For 3 days, she barely slept. The studio felt too quiet. Every car that passed outside made her heart jump. On the 4th night, the elevator doors opened. Luke stepped out, pale but whole. She crossed the room before he could speak, throwing her arms around him. "Don't ever do that again," she whispered against his shoulder. He exhaled, one hand resting at the back of her head. "It's done," he said softly. "All of it. I burned what needed burning." "What does that mean?" "It means we're free." She pulled back just enough to look at him. "Free? For the first time," he said. "No debts, no enemies. Just life." Her throat tightened. "So what now?" Luke smiled, tired, soft, real. "Now I choose." "Choose what?" He brushed his thumb along her cheek. "Whether I stay in this world, or leave it with you." Elena felt tears sting her eyes. "You don't need to choose between them, Luke. You already know where you belong." He studied her face for a long time before whispering, "Then I'm done." He took her hand. "We leave tomorrow." They packed in silence that night. She filled her small suitcase with sketchbooks and clothes, he filled his with files, phones, a few photos. When dawn came, they stood by the window watching the city wake, two souls caught between past and possibility. Luke turned to her. "Do you regret it? Any of this?" She shook her head. "Every terrible thing brought me here. How could I regret that?" He smiled faintly. "Then let's go." They drove south for hours, leaving Chicago behind, skyscrapers fading to suburbs, suburbs to open fields. By the time they reached the countryside, the air felt lighter. Luke parked near a quiet lake surrounded by tall pines. He stepped out first, the weight of his old world falling away with every breath. "It's strange," he said quietly. "I thought I'd feel empty." "And?" she asked. "I feel alive." Elena smiled. "That's what starting over feels like." They spent the night in a small cabin by the water, candles flickering against the wooden walls. Luke poured her a glass of wine, his movements unhurried for once. "You know," he said, "I spent my whole life trying to own the city. I never realized all I wanted was peace like this." "You can have it," she said. "If you let yourself." He looked at her then, something tender flickering in his eyes. "I already have." And for the first time in either of their lives, silence wasn't something to fear. Months later, summer settled over the Midwest. The lake shimmered under sunlight, wildflowers lined the narrow dirt road, and the sound of cicadas hummed in the trees. Elena woke early every morning, sunlight spilling across the sheets. Luke was usually already up, coffee brewed, breakfast simple and quiet. He'd changed in small ways she couldn't have imagined. He laughed more. He spent afternoons reading instead of checking messages. He'd even learned how to make bread, though he claimed it was just chemistry with better smells. Sometimes, she caught glimpses of the old Luke, the man who measured his words, who scanned every room out of habit. But those moments faded faster each day, replaced by calm. They lived quietly, her designing for clients online, him managing a few legitimate businesses from afar. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was theirs. One morning, she was sketching by the lake when Luke walked up behind her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Still working?" he asked. "Always," she said with a smile. He looked at her sketchbook, a drawing of the cabin, the lake, the tall trees swaying in the breeze. "You should sell that one," he said. She laughed. "Not everything's for sale." Luke smiled faintly. Spoken like someone who's finally learned her worth. She turned to face him. "And you? Have you learned yours?" He hesitated, then nodded. "Maybe. 4 years, I thought my worth came from what people feared. Now I think it comes from who I protect and who I love." Her chest tightened. "You don't have to protect me anymore." He smiled softly. "Habit." They stood there for a moment, the sound of water lapping against the shore. Then he said, "I was thinking, we could open something together. A gallery. Your designs, my investments. Something that belongs to both of us." She blinked. "You mean it?" Luke nodded. "You made me believe in creation again. I want to build something that doesn't require destruction to stand." Elena smiled. "Then let's do it." By autumn, The gallery opened in a small nearby town, clean white walls, tall windows, and pieces from local artists filling the space. They called it Luce, Italian for light. It became a quiet success. People came not because of who Luke used to be, but because of what they created together. One afternoon, as they stood in the doorway watching people wander through, Luke leaned close and murmured, "You know, they'd never believe this was me." She smiled. "Good. That means you've changed." He glanced at her. "Have I?" "You've stopped surviving," she said. "Now you're living." That evening, they drove back to the cabin. The sun was low, casting golden light across the lake. Elena made coffee while Luke sat outside, the horizon reflected in his eyes. "You ever think about the city?" she asked, stepping beside him. "Sometimes," he said. "But it feels like another life now. Do you miss it?" He thought for a moment, then shook his head. "I miss who I thought I was there. But not who I became." Elena sat beside him, resting her head against his shoulder. "You don't have to be anyone else anymore." He smiled faintly. "And you don't have to be afraid." "I'm not," she said. "Good," he murmured. They sat in silence for a long while, the air cool, the world still. Somewhere in the distance, a train's low whistle echoed, a reminder that life kept moving, that everything they'd survived had led them here. Later that night, under a sky scattered with stars, Elena looked out over the lake and thought of how far they'd come, from fear to peace, from control to choice. Luke came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "You're thinking again," he said. "Just about us," she whispered. "How it all started." He smiled against her hair. "You mean the night I interrupted your shift?" She laughed softly. "Yes. I hated you for that. And now?" She turned to face him. "Now I love you for it." Luke's eyes softened. "I never wanted to change your world, Elena. I just wanted to give you one without fear." "You did," she said. "And in return, I gave you one with hope." He smiled, not the hard, practiced smile of the man who once ruled a city, but something real, almost fragile. "Then we're even," he said quietly. They kissed, slow, unhurried, the kind of kiss that didn't need promises because everything unspoken had already been kept. When they finally pulled apart, Luke looked toward the horizon. "You know what's strange," he said. "I spent my life trying to own the world. Turns out all I ever wanted was one small piece of it right here." Elena smiled. "Then it's yours." He took her hand. "Ours." The stars shimmered on the lake as the night deepened, the reflection of two lives that had walked through darkness and found light on the other side. Neither hero nor villain. Just two people who chose each other and never looked back. If this story pulled you in, imagine what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, and join our growing family of story lovers. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Elena's place? Your thoughts might inspire the next chapter. Until then, stay curious and stay dangerous.